Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. You're going to make a settings page and then a dialog to edit those settings. Since the dialog needs to change while we are editing, we're going to have a state for it. So we're going to use a StatefulBuilder for that. Then we use the navigator widget to pop the dialog and return the new data. So let's start. We create a basic app with Flutter Gray and we delete the basic stuff. Alright, we're going to start with the settings page. We change the default My Home Page widget using F2 in VS Code. Then we check the titles of the app and the page. Alright, now let's start with the state data of the page. So we define the settings variable as a map of strings and dynamics, so we can store different types of data. We're going to define name, weight, height, age, and 4 booleans: push-ups, squats, bicycle, and burpees. So now let's start by displaying the data. For the string data, we're going to use list styles. So first we define a column, then we define the first list style with a leading of an icon, then we give it a title and a subtitle with the value of the name in the settings map. We parse it with toString because it's a dynamic type. We need to always do this with dynamic types. We repeat this for weight, height, and age. Now for the booleans, we're going to create a row that displays thumbs up for true and thumbs down for false. So for each boolean, we have a column with a text widget and then an icon widget with 8 of padding. We change the icon depending on the value of the boolean. Here I had some problems with the value of the boolean, so what I do is parse it to a string and then compare that string with the value true. Now we align the main axis of the row by space around so it looks nicer. Finally, here we create a button to edit this and launch the dialog. So we use an outline button widget. We put an empty function on the onPress for now, and we put a text widget as a child. Now we're going to see the settings dialog. So here the basic idea is to have a simple dialog inside a stateful widget. So then we can dynamically change what's inside the dialog and later send that new data to the parent using the navigator widget. Notice that when you open a dialog, it goes into the navigator widget, and we can use the pop method of the navigator to close the dialog and also send information to the parent. Let's first talk about the function settings dialog. For the parameter, we're going to need the context to display the dialog and also a map for the settings. The function is a feature that returns a map for the settings. Remember to use the async keyword in the definition of the function. We use the await keyword with the show dialog since this is a feature itself. We set variable dismissible to false so the user can't touch the background to close the dialog. We want the user to click the apply button and receive the new data. We also give the context so the dialog can receive the navigator widget and the theme of the app. We wrap the stateful widget with a function to have the state data. So here, the simple dialog is the function that displays the dialog that we give as a builder, but since we want to update it, we put it inside the stateful widget. So for the simple dialog, it's just that, a widget for a dialog that accepts padding, a title, and children's. So here we offload the data that we receive from the settings map. Here we could and we should do some data checking, but I wanted to make this a little bit simpler, so for now we only parse the data. Again, here I had some issues parsing the boolean, so we convert the dynamic type to string and we check it to the true string. So basically the StatefulBuilder creates a widget that can call an internal state and reprint the screen. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that any variable that represents state should be kept outside the builder function. Otherwise, they will reset every time the widget reprints. That's why we wrap the stateful widget with a function. So for the builder, we are going to have a function that returns a simple dialog. Before going to the layout, let's see how we execute the function in the outline button in the main widget. So basically we run the function, giving it the context and the settings, and then we're going to see that we're going to use the .then because this is a feature to retrieve the data. So now let's go over the layout of the simple dialog and talk about how the data changes and how we send the data in the end. Now first we are going to start with the input fields. To get the name of the person, we use a padding and then a text form field. We set the initial value to the name variable, then we set a decoration with the input decoration widget to have an icon and a label name with the name variable. Then for the onChange, we give a function that calls the state of the widget to change the name to the new value. This function is going to be called every time we change the input value. We do the same for the weight input field. This time we set the value to the weight, but we parse it to a string. We also need to parse the value given to an integer. Here we should make a better job of checking the input if it's an integer or not, although the integer parser sort of does some already. We use a slider for the age, so first set the value of the slider, the minimum and the maximum values, and then the number of division the slide has. Here we want 1 for each year. Then we set the label to a string of the age. And then onChange function works similar to the rest, but here we need to round the value before setting the age variable. We do the same for the height slider. I know that the example doesn't make that much sense putting the age and the height in a slider, but I wanted to make an example with a slider so you understand how to use the slider, right? So yeah. Now we make a row of checkboxes to set the boolean values. Let's explain one because the rest is sort of the same. So we set a column with 2 children, the title of the boolean and a checkbox with the value of the corresponding boolean. When changed, we set the boolean to a new value. And we do the same with the rest of booleans. Now to finish here, we put a flat button with a padding and a text of apply. Then the important part, when pressed, what we do is pop the navigator, essentially closing the dialog and returning data in the process. Here we return the map of settings. Notice that it needs to have all the same values, more on this later. And other thing is, if the application has multiple navigator objects, it may be necessary to call navigator with root navigator true to close the dialog, so that's why we set it to true here. Now to finish the main widget, here we catch data sent with the future doing .then and updating the state with that. For what I'm seeing, Flutter just replaces the whole map, so the data should be the same, otherwise we're going to have problems. This is not the best solution since we lost a lot of data in the process. We changed the whole map for another map, so maybe in the future we'll revisit this using the block pattern or all the state solutions, so subscribe if you want to see that. Alright, we have a sweet settings dialog for our apps. You're welcome to modify this to whatever you want. The concept is the same for doing a lot of things. Here we do settings, but we can do whatever we want with this kind of dialogues and sending data through the navigator. Hope you like it. Subscribe for more. If you want to chat, go to my Twitter. I'm almost there. And that's it for me. I see you in the next one. Bye.